Hey guys! I mentioned in my last frequently asked questions video that I would be doing another follow-up video on my experience going to college for art. So this is this video. And it's going to be a little bit long, and that's just because, it was my college experience. I spent 3 years at art school, so it kind of was a long process. So I'll try to be as concise as possible, but it probably will be a little bit long, so please bear with me. But let's just get started. By the way, if you hear that in the background, that's my dog barking, and hopefully he stops, but he's a big barker. Awesome. Anyways, as I mentioned in my last video, I did go to Academy of Art University in San Francisco. I started going there in fall of 2011, and I finished up in fall of 2014. I majored in illustration, and I should mention, side note, 3 years is not actually very standard for going to art school. I transferred in from another school, so I had classes transfer with me. I doubled up on my classes, so I kind of sped through the process. It's much more normal for people to go to school for 4 to 5 years, so I'm just throwing that out there. My decision to go there was kind of almost accidental. At the time, I was actually going to San Jose State, and I was majoring in animation, and I did not like it at all. It just wasn't for me. And then someone I knew was taking a tour of Academy of Art to check out their game department, and I tagged along, started talking to the tour guide, and mentioned that I was an illustrator, and they actually signed me up for the illustration tour. They showed me the illustration building, they showed me all the classes they had, and I just completely fell in love with it. And the next day I decided to apply. And this is where I will mention the admissions process for Academy of Art. Academy of Art is not a school that requires you to pass some kind of portfolio review to apply. This is not super typical. A lot of specialized private art colleges will require you to pass some kind of portfolio review. My school didn't have that. It was you paid for the fees, you signed up for the classes, and you got in. And I would like to side note, I don't think that had any effect on the quality of the courses or the quality of the teachers. I'll get into the classes and teachers more later, but I still think, really, really good classes, really good teachers. That's just how my school happened to do it. In terms of the actual classes, once I actually applied and started going there, we started out with foundations classes, or what they call foundations classes, and that is, I think I mentioned this in my other video, a lot of life drawing, figure drawing, clothed figure drawing. We had to take color theory, we even had to take a basic sculpting class to understand how to form things. We had to make, spheres and squares and cubes and things like that to understand form a little bit more. And as I mentioned before, I transferred into this school, so I had a lot of classes kind of covered already when I started going there, which meant I ended up spending about half my time at this school doing foundations classes and then half my time taking illustration classes. Again, that's not the same for everybody. That's just how it worked for me. Again, with the ums. Foundations, I really think it was useful. I absolutely, even though at the time was like, oh, I hate oil painting, oh, I hate life drawing, this is so boring, it made me an infinitely better artist. And I really think, that's a valuable thing for anyone to have, is to understand life drawing and understanding form and understanding how to draw things realistically. So I'm absolutely happy now that those were requirements for us before we could pursue more specialized classes. So that was really great in retrospect. After that, I took illustration-based courses. When I started going to my school, I thought I was going to be a children's book illustrator. I only did traditional art. I didn't do any digital art. I didn't like digital art. And so I was planning on taking all watercolor classes and children's book illustration classes. And I did a few of them, and I still enjoy it. I still work in watercolors. I still work in traditional media. But about a few semesters in, towards my last year there, we had to take this one required course where we had to learn digital vectors and intro to flash animation, and I remember just being so mad about it and not wanting to take it, but I did it anyways. And that's when I discovered that I absolutely love working in vectors, and I actually do really like digital art, and I ended up kind of changing my focus a little bit. So I kind of moved away from kids book illustrations and I started getting more into designs that were a little bit more graphic. I started getting into making collections for like marketing and licensing and things like that. So that shifted for me a little bit towards the end. I still, like I said, really like traditional illustration and things like that, but it did end up making me realize that there are more things that I enjoy doing. So that was my general experience with the classes. If you guys want, I can list below all of the classes that I took. It's a lot. There's no way I'm going to list them all here, but I can list them below if you guys are interested in what I took. And I can say which ones were required and which ones I chose to take. Thoughts on art school in general. This is what I get asked a lot. I know there's a really big debate on, do you need to go to art school or do you not need to? And I feel like there's always people on either end. Some people are like, you have to go to art school, you can't learn this on your own. And other people are like, art school's such a waste of time and money, like you don't need to do any of that. And I think there are pros and cons to both. And I don't think it's fair to kind of say art school's the only way. And on the other hand, I don't think it's fair to villainize art school either. I think it's just person to person. Personally, I lack focus. I lack focus a lot. I procrastinate a lot. I have trouble being motivated. It's something that I've dealt with for a really long time. And so art school was something that worked for me because having to show up to class, having deadlines, having assignments, having structure really helped me focus. And I honestly think like if I hadn't gone to art school and I just decided to pursue it on the side while I majored in something else, I probably would have stopped doing it nearly as much. It would not be my career. It would not be something that I do all of the time. So that is what worked for me. That doesn't mean that's the same for everybody. It just means, you know, I needed more of that structure than some people might. Also, sorry if the lighting gets weird. It's like overcast today, but like the clouds keep moving in front of the sun and just like, yeah. So getting back to kind of the pros and cons of going to art school, as I mentioned, it does give you focus and it can expose you to new things you may not even realize you liked. Like my experience showed me that I do like digital artwork. It showed me a whole different side of the industry that I didn't even know about. And it ended up really opening up my opportunities because if I hadn't had to take those digital art classes, I never would have gotten into vectors, I never would have gotten into graphic design, and I never would have gotten my job as a graphic designer after college, which was a huge experience for me. It completely changed my portfolio, it completely changed, wow. It changed my experience with what I'm doing in my career right now and really expanded my abilities when it comes to art, which is something super invaluable to me. It also really helps you in terms of making connections with people. I made a ton of friends while I was there, and I'm still friends with a lot of them now. And a lot of them work in the industry, and they're, you know, we're all pursuing art still. We get feedback from each other. You know, we can help out with each other at shows. We make connections in the industry from all of our jobs, and you can't beat that. Like when you are working in the industry, your reputation and who you know makes up such a huge part of your career. So it's really kind of important to build those connections, and school basically lays them out in front of you. You don't have to try as hard to find them. And you also end up meeting your teachers who, you know, at my school, they are all professionals who've worked in the industry, people who have a ton of connections, people who have really, really valuable insight. And I still stay in touch with a lot of my teachers from school. You know, I will sometimes still go to drawing events at my old campus just to kind of, you know, keep up practicing and stuff like that. And it's great to talk to them as somebody in the industry versus someone who's a student, you know, so you can't really put a price tag on that part of it, I don't think. And it also just kind of like gives you access to resources, which to me was a huge deal. One of the big cons that people say that like they have with art school, or like one of the big problems they have with art school, is it's expensive. Yes, it is incredibly expensive. I had to take out a lot of loans. I'm in pretty deep student loan debt right now. But if you are smart, you can get some of that money back by taking advantage of the resources that are given to you. For example, I took an animal anatomy class, and part of our lab fees and our class tuition went towards bringing live animals in for us to draw. And it wasn't just horses or dogs. They brought in a cheetah, they brought in a lemur, they brought in a giant porcupine, they brought in like alligator. those are like up close and personal, and it included zoo visits too, and drawing at the zoo is great, but these animals were feet from us and we got to draw them. You know, like that's not an experience you get in a typical classroom. There were also labs that we were allowed to use with brand new computers that had all of the newest software. We had a Cintiq lab with really, really new like Wacom Cintiq tablets that you could get access to if you needed it. Like those are all things that if you take advantage of them, contribute to you learning and succeeding, and it kind of makes up for a little bit of the tuition that you pay, so you really kind of have to look at it in that way. But I'm not gonna lie, like, yes, there are cons to it. It is really expensive. You have to commit a lot of time to it. It's really, really difficult. A lot of people honestly do end up dropping out, and you have to kind of decide, like, is this a commitment I can make or not? So, like I said before a million times, it depends on you personally. Like, I don't want anyone to think because I did things a certain way, it's the way to do it, or because I was fortunate enough to have a really good experience, that everyone is going to have a really good experience with it. This is something that's just giving you insight on it so you can do research on it and decide for yourself. So people ask, like, would I do it again if I had to make that decision now? And despite how much it cost me, I probably would, because of all the things I got out of it. I do think it was worth it, even though I'm going to be paying off those loans for a really long time. I think it was worth it for me. And so I'm going to end this video with some tips for people who are either in school or planning on going to art school, or for people who are deciding not to do it but still want to pursue art. If you are going to art school, if you've gotten into one, congratulations, or if you're planning on applying to it, just a couple of tips based on what I learned and some things that I didn't do super well when I was in college. First of all, like, pace yourself. Like, when it comes to taking care of your physical and mental health in college, we already, like, it's standard college, a lot of college students don't take care of themselves. Art school can be even worse because, you know, sometimes, like, if you're writing a paper or you're doing like a history thing or a math thing, there is a right answer or a wrong answer. If you're doing a painting that takes you 30 hours to do, and it's just not coming out right, or the perspective is wrong, or the paint just like isn't working with you, sometimes it means scrapping hours of work and starting over again. There were a lot of all-nighters, there were a lot of tears, which, to be fair, has not changed a ton since I graduated. I just get paid to do it now versus paying to do it. But don't procrastinate, you know, like, pace yourself, give yourself enough time to do things. It's not worth the stress to just wait till the last minute. Your work is not going to be as good. You're going to be miserable. You know, don't do what I did, which I mentioned. I doubled up on classes because by the time I transferred into school, I had been going to college for 3 years. I was kind of tired. Like, I didn't want to be in another college for 5 years. So I was taking 12 or 13 classes a year instead of 8, which is a lot. Like, that's how I got through it so quickly. But I was super stressed and I was super burnt out. And the worst part is I never recovered after college because I graduated and then I started working immediately, and I never really gave myself a chance to get a good work ethic right away. And unfortunately, that meant by the time I got my graphic design job and then left that, I was so stressed out that I ended up in the hospital. And you don't want to do that because it's just not worth it. You know, make sure you're eating enough, make sure you're getting enough water, make sure you're sleeping enough, please. Do not down a million coffees a day. Do not down a bunch of rock stars. Do not down a million 5-hour energies because you were up until 3 in the morning and had an 8 a.m. class. It's not worth what it does to your health. Like, my last year of college, I stopped drinking coffee because I was drinking so many cups a day that my hands were starting to shake and the tremors were keeping me from being able to draw. Like, these are all things not to do in college. Please, please take care of yourself. If you are deciding not to go to art school because you think it might not be right for you or you just can't afford it, that's totally fair and that's totally valid. It's not the only way to get an education, and don't feel bad because you want to be an artist but you don't want to go to school or you can't afford it. There's nothing wrong with that, and you have other options. Before I went there, I did take some art classes at my community college, and they had, you know, live figure drawing classes where you had access to models and you had access to, you know, setups and things like that with teachers critiquing you. And that's great. And those classes are, you know, like maybe a couple $100 versus $3,000, and you could take them as you need it. You don't have to enroll and get a degree. You can just take them as you need them, you know, go to workshops and things like that. So check out what your community college has available for you, or if there's anything available in your community. Free art classes or inexpensive art classes at rec centers, totally a thing. So just research what's available in your area. And even if you don't go to a class, draw everything around you. Like, people ask me all the time, like, how do I get better as an artist? And the simple answer is you practice and you practice and you practice. So like I said before, like, we had to take foundations classes and learn to draw from life first. Go out and draw everything. Draw people, draw animals, draw buildings, and just practice. Like, there are endless things to draw in the world, so just keep drawing them until you understand them, and then apply that towards whatever type of art you want to do. And if you feel like you need some kind of structure, there are inexpensive or free online classes, or you can go on, you know, Google search, or go on Pinterest or Tumblr and find art tutorials that people post, because there are millions and millions and millions of them. So many people post them. And, you know, just search do you want to learn color theory? Search color theory. If you want to learn, you know, how to draw clothed figure drawing, search clothed figure models and just draw them. And you just have to know where your resources are and how to find them. But don't think that art school is the only way to become an artist. I don't think anyone should feel more or less valid as an artist because of how they chose to get where they get. I think it's all about, you know, finding out what works for you to get to the end goal of being an artist and being able to do what you love, you know. So I don't want anyone to think, you know, I think I'm better than anyone because I went to art school. I don't want anyone to think, you know, you have to go to art school, or, you know, anything like that. It's just about a means to an end. So as long as you get to the end you want, the means is not always important. And besides that, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. I mean, again, sorry I kind of really rambled in this video, but I did want to touch base on a lot of the stuff people ask me when it comes to art school. That was just my general experience. I hope that helped you guys. If you're interested in going, or if you were on the fence about going, I hope that gave you some insight. But, you know, besides that, I hope if anyone's interested in going to art school or is thinking about going, let me know down below. I'd like to hear about your guys' experience. If you've been to art school, let me know what your experience with that was. Because, you know, it's always fun to hear what other people experienced when they did the same sort of thing that you did. But that wraps that up. I hope you guys are all having a really great day, and until next time, have a really great day. Again, I cannot talk today. It's been a very long morning. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!